Always live lovely.
You are now listening to Breaking Barriers, a mental health discussion. I'm your host, Chetina Guadalupe. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, consultant, speaker, and singer. Breaking Barriers, a mental health discussion was created to provide examples of conversations with various people on stigmatizing topics, to break barriers so that you can be encouraged to go within your own community and have these same conversations. Each episode is timeless. There's always something that you can receive from it over and over again. We push the bar a little bit with the topics we talk about. That's why it's called Breaking Barriers. We speak about things that people typically aren't creating space for so that we can all receive healing. Share with everyone you know because of this. There's something that everyone can benefit from in each episode. If you like what you hear and would like to support Always Live Lovely, please donate. This helps us to be able to continue to provide free information on multiple platforms. I will leave the link below. We appreciate any support you're able to provide to keep this thing going. If you would like to stay connected with all things Always Live Lovely, you can visit us at www.alwayslivelovely.com. We provide individual mental health, therapy services, consultations, products, music, information on upcoming events, and so much more. Don't miss out. And of course, if you like my vibe and you would like me to speak on your platform or at your next mental health event, connect with me at connect@alwayslivelovely.com. Enjoy the episode and remember, always live lovely.
Always living lovely. Just don't let the times go by. Do something. You don't gotta go outside yourself to prove nothing. You can lean on me if you need a hand. You can lean on me if you need a friend. You know that I got you. You know that we got you. Yeah.
Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Barriers, a mental health discussion. I am so excited about this episode. One, because it is near and dear to my heart and long awaited. And two, because I got somebody to do this season finale with me. I'm not just sharing a story of myself on my own. Like, we really are about to just share the space and share both of our stories on a topic that, like I said, y'all, it's been long awaited. It's been a build up of a couple of episodes. So I'm really excited to finally get around to the topic we're going to talk about today, which I'll let y'all know in a minute. But I definitely want you to just know this lovely person that I have on here today, hyping up the space. I'm not sure, is this your first podcast that you're being featured on?
This actually is my first podcast.
Okay, then. So listen, we really got to make sure that we show her love because it's the first podcast. And if you know anything about podcasts, being on any type of talk, anything, it's not the easiest thing to do. So definitely want a warm welcome from Mrs. Gabrielle. And I'm going to let Gabrielle introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabrielle McQueen. I am an associate marriage and family therapist, a Bay Area native. I've been doing therapy for almost 10 years. I also own my own group practice. It's telehealth only and focuses on the BIPOC community and just really trying to help everyone start healing, especially all my Bay Area natives and just California natives. So I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited that y'all are here too. And do y'all hear those boss moves that she's making? Like being at AMFT, already putting things in place to have the group practice going and running. So then when fully licensed, it's bada boom, bada bing from there. So I'm very proud of you. And I'm excited for all of the expertise as well as experience that you're going to share in this episode. Okay, so I know y'all like, okay, we get it, Chetina, like you've been talking about kids and we covered this and we covered that. So what is today? It wouldn't be surprising, but today is the episode will be on talking about becoming a mother. A mother, as Keke Palmer. I've been seeing Keke Palmer everywhere. She's like, I'm a mother.
Love her.
Listen, I feel that because I'm a mother. But today we talk about becoming a mother. We are going to be basically focusing on moment of like finding out you're pregnant all the way up until that first year postpartum of when your child turns one, because so much stuff happens during that period. So you're
Mhm.
pushed and pulled, and you're like changed in so many ways. You know, your relationship is changed in so many ways. There's just so much good things and interesting things happening, to where I usually call it my beautiful chaos, because that's been the only way that I've been able to encapsulate all that the experience is. I also want to know it is called becoming a mother, but I do want to be sensitive to people that may not identify as mother, but also that are birthing bodies. So generally just know I'm talking about birthing body experiences in general, but it is more specific to the becoming a mother portion of things. All right. So, and getting even just started with this, like, Gabrielle, can I call you Gabby on the podcast?
Yes, you can call me
Okay.
Gabby.
Gabby. And just going back to when you first got pregnant, like, I'm talking about you had the stick in your hand. It was like, oh, so this what we doing. Like, if you could go back to that moment and just think about what you were feeling, what was coming up for you, how was that?
I was very much in denial. Um, very much in denial. I can't even say like it was quarantine, so I was just like, okay, this was planned because it was like 6 months after I got married. But I was just like, okay, I didn't know it was going to happen this fast. Um, yeah, I was shocked. I took like 3 pregnancy tests, like, and I like, I like snuck out the house, told my husband, I was like, I'm gonna run to Target. So he wouldn't come with me anyways. And I like bought the test, snuck in the house, took them. And I remember the first test, I was like, okay, it's a little light, they playing. And then I waited the next day, took another one. And it was like around Cinco de Mayo. So I was also hurt because I was looking forward to
She was like, I'm
celebrating
trying to be
Cinco de
lit.
Mayo. And that third test was like, girl, sit down. You are very pregnant.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was in denial for a while and just like, dang, like I'm really pregnant in this pandemic. And even though wanted it, but I was just like, yeah, I was like, this is for real. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely it makes sense. I feel like some people feel like if people plan something, then there should be no shock, but there's still like a wait. So we really not playing no games. Like, this really is about to happen. I was just saying it, but we stuck now. Like, I completely understand that, because I feel like mine was, we always just say that we just made him out of love. We loved each other so much, and it was just like, hey, if the baby come, the baby come. But again, when you say that, you're like, if the baby come, the baby come, and then the baby coming. You're like, oh, that, that really happened. So it definitely
yes.
was like same here too. I had a couple of pregnancy tests, and I learned a lot about, like, the interesting thing is, I feel like growing up, you just know A plus B equals C. So anytime you have any sexual encounter, you're always like, I can easily get pregnant. But what they don't tell you is, as you get older, it's not always as easy as A plus B equals C. Like, it happens one time and then you like, I'm pregnant. That's not always the case. It can take time. And as we know from various people's pregnancy experience, it can take years to actually get pregnant, or there could be complications that come up. And I feel like that's not something that's taught to you when you're younger. Maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it should be. I don't know. That's an argument for a different for a different day. But we definitely found that out. Like, oh, it's not just an easy streamlined process. Different things can take time for different reasons. And I definitely feel like I went all the way down to getting like that digital I needed to say you're you're pregnant, because I was like, whoa. And I definitely took the test by myself, and I was like calling my sister like, oh snap, I need to tell Rod. Should I tell Rod right now? Like, I don't even know what to do. And then when we got in the car, my question literally was like, what would you do if I was pregnant? And he told me, and he had a great answer. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm pregnant. So I'm pregnant, and the test is at home, and they say I'm pregnant, but I don't believe it. So it is that whole denial. And I was in denial maybe all the way, which is another shocker. I didn't know. I thought, I think this is from watching too many movies. I thought you get pregnant and then they bring you into the doctor and they take your pregnancy test right away, and then they automatically tell you that you're pregnant, and you go through all these hoops and loops of things. I
Mhm.
didn't know that they were going to make you wait about 2 months or so out.
Mhm.
So even when I'm telling like the doctors to set up prenatal appointments, I'm like, so the test says I'm pregnant, but let me tell you now, we ain't believing that, girl. Like, so we gonna wait until we get there. We gonna see what y'all say. And then they're going through all the steps. And I'm like, you're not hearing me. Am I even really pregnant? So, okay, we're gonna go through all the steps, but I'm gonna wait until you tell me I am. So it's such an interesting time. I don't know if you felt that way too or how long you were. I was like still the first couple of weeks. So I don't know how long you had to wait between then and like your first appointment, but I definitely was like, y'all making me do all this stuff, but y'all don't even know if I'm really pregnant. But okay, we don't take the vitamins and stuff. Okay, it's fine.
It was like the peak of quarantine. Like we had just got on lockdown. I also had just bought a Frenchie. So I was also like,
Uh-huh.
I'm not why didn't I know this beforehand? Um, and so they weren't really like they were just like, oh, okay, like they booked my appointment, like I feel like you said like 6 weeks later or something. And I was like, wait, like that's a long time. Don't y'all want to make sure everything's
Right.
okay?
Exactly.
And they were like, no, no, you'll be fine because we want to make sure you're still gonna be pregnant. In my mind, I'm like, you ain't said nothing but a word. Because I'm like, I'm trying to see too. And so like I think for me, I didn't know, like, because I didn't feel nauseous or anything until like basically it was felt like after my first appointment, but I was a runner a lot. So I would like run where we lived in Milpitas, I'll run to Levi Stadium and back.
Hmm.
And I would go like up Mission Peak. And I was running one day and I was like, I gotta use the bathroom. Like, I'm not gonna make it. Like, and I just had like the BGs and I was like, oh my God, like this has never happened. So I was like
Hmm.
speed walking back. And then it happened to me like
Not
another
the speed
time.
walk.
I was. And then it happened to me like a week later, I was on Mission Peak and I felt nauseous. And I was like, I've never felt nauseous coming to Mission Peak.
Hmm.
And then I told my husband, he was like, maybe you're pregnant. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Because again, I was like, it's about to be summer. We were supposed to go to Costa
It's supposed to
Rica.
be a hot girl
I
summer. What you
wasn't,
mean?
yeah, COVID. I wasn't really phased by COVID yet. And the pregnancy test was like, you're pregnant. And then the first
Yeah.
appointment, I was like, the doctor was all excited. She was like, look at it. And I was literally like, it looks like an alien. Like it literally looks like an alien from the movie Alien. Like I wasn't phased. I was just like, okay, maybe I'll check back in a couple months. Like
Right. Right. And it's really interesting. Like one thing I do want to like point out about both of our stories because we both did have a baby while COVID has been a thing. Yours was at the peak. Mine was basically a year ago because my son just turned one. And definitely something that's always in the back of my mind is maybe some things that the experience is different from people that had babies pre-COVID, and some of the experiences that we people may have had even differs between the states that COVID is in. Um, and those are things that we definitely can highlight because I know I even think about the people that were pregnant right when COVID hit, and there were like really, really, really strict things going on in the hospital, and then things kind of got a little bit looser, and then now I don't really know what they are. I feel like they're getting a little bit more to what they were before, but I did want to point that out. And then so even let's just like talk about like you said that first prenatal appointment and just kind of like encapsulating some highlights of like what your pregnancy specifically was like, and you know how you just kind of like went through that experiences, were there some highs and lows that really like stuck out to you while you were pregnant before you actually had the baby.
it was interesting because they were only letting one person in. So my
Mm-hmm.
entire pregnancy, I went to my appointments by myself and
Mm-hmm.
like I would just FaceTime my husband. And also like my family history was like kind of high risk. So I appreciated the team I had. I delivered at Stanford and like all my OBGYN team was at Palo Alto Medical Foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was kind of scared during that time because it was around the time when like all the stuff around like Black moms dying and stuff was like high. And I was like, wait a second, I'm not trying to die.
Mm-hmm.
But my team, like Stanford wasn't planned. Like once they like um asked me certain questions my first appointment, they were like, oh yeah, we're giving you every single test possible on the face of the planet to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you don't die. So my OBGYN like scheduled everything. I had like a fetal echo, I had an echo, I had genetic counseling, I had all types of tests like done. So I felt safe. It just felt kind of like not lonely, but like I felt like I missed out of the part of like my husband physically being there.
Mm-hmm.
He was only able to come to the fetal echo for us to like hear a son's heartbeat and like make sure
Right.
everything's fine. Um, and it was just like kind of eerie, kind of in a sense, because you had to wear a mask. It was like appointments were scheduled a specific way to make sure people were like distant. Um, Even like going to the grocery stores, like I didn't go to the grocery stores. My husband would go because it was like at risk, and I couldn't take the smell of grocery stores either.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it was like that for you because you had yours like later.
Mm-hmm.
But like my everything was by myself. And so I didn't have the same experience. Like some people be like, oh, your husband gets to do this or you get to do these things. It was more like very safety driven.
Right.
And even up to the point where like near the end, like my last week, my blood pressure was like creeping up, and so my doctor like scheduled for me to be induced because she was like, "We're not
Oh,
even
so
taking
you
your
had a
blood first."
pre-scheduling because you're interested. It's
Yeah,
gonna be so
so
interesting telling the differences of our story.
yeah, she pre-scheduled me, and then so he was supposed to be due on December 27th. She pre-scheduled me for December for Christmas Eve, and then she was like, "No, no, no, we're moving you up, so December 22nd." And then I don't know, God had another plan, or my son did. Somebody had another plan because I ate some spicy shrimp from this Mexican restaurant. I had 2 bites. I'm no lie. And I was swallowed it, and I was like, I can't eat this. Like it's burning in my chest. My mucus plug came out the next morning.
He said, "You making the spot hot. It's time to get out."
My mucus plug came out the next morning. I texted my friend like, "Can you move me up?" Because I was supposed to get my hair braided like that Monday. And she's like, girl, you'll be fine. Like, mucus supposed to come out. You won't have him for a week. And I was like, I don't know, Patrice. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
he's coming. So we ran errands and stuff the whole time. And mind you, I also had Braxton Hicks like early. Like I had
Okay.
Braxton Hicks at like 18 weeks, and my doctor was a little nervous, but my cervix stayed closed. Braxton Hicks is that's a devil's work. It's
I
a
don't even
zero
know
out of
think
10.
I ever had them.
0 out of 10. Definitely not. No. So I was having Braxton. I thought I was having Braxton Hicks the whole day. We were like running errands to like finish up my birthing bag or whatever they call it. And we get home and I'm like, oh, my feet swollen. That was the first time my whole pregnancy anything swelled up. And I was like, let me go
Mm-hmm.
sit my butt down. And I literally was like, I'm gonna make some cookies and we're gonna relax. I went and turned the oven on, went and got my stuff ready for my bath, turned around, and my water broke. I was so hurt.
Listen, he said it was a little spice in them. So listen, it's time for me to make my exit. I don't know what you thought. I don't know what you was planning, but
And I
I need
was
to
so
go celebrate.
confused because people don't explain what water breaking looks or feels like. Because
I'm telling you, the
I was
movies
peeing
be
on
having us
myself.
messed up.
I thought I was peeing on myself, and it was a whole water fountain. And I was like, but I can't stop it, so I'm not peeing on myself. And I had leggings on it. It was like somebody
Yeah.
unleashed a fire
Unleash the
hydrant.
waterfall.
Like it was intense. It was weird. But once that happened, I actually felt relief, and I didn't know that whole day when I thought I was having Braxton Hicks, I was in like active labor.
That makes sense of why you were like, but I don't know. But see, and it's like us not necessarily knowing a lot of things and
Hmm.
learning after the fact and having to reflect on it.
Yes. So it was wild. I ended up getting diagnosed with preeclampsia when I got to the hospital.
Oh,
So they induced me.
okay. See, that's part of my story too, but it's so interesting hearing the difference in like our days leading up or even just like our experience prenatally. Because I know for me, my experience was it's a it was an all over the place one. I have some very high grateful moments, and then I have some like y'all had me messed up from the get-go. So definitely like going into the beginning, like I had some challenges with my OB. Like we
Mhm,
were not seeing eye to eye, and then because of where I birthed, we're gonna leave them unnamed. But there, sometimes I definitely feel like they're overwhelmed, and there's too many patients there. And when you
mhm,
get a place where there's too many patients there, I feel like the tender loving care that you need just doesn't quite happen.
mhm,
So after I worked the kinks out with my OB, and I found me another one. Um, I didn't really actually get to see my OB except for maybe once during my whole pregnancy. Like I saw
mhm,
somebody different every single time.
mm,
So that was like it was hard to find safety in that, which is a huge reason of what drove me and my husband to get a doula because there needed to be some sense of consistency. No matter who all the other people were, I needed to know I got my two riders, and we
mhm,
know consistently what the plan is because I don't know how this is going to continue to happen. Fortunately, that lasted all the way up until me birthing because of also ended up having preeclampsia and being in the hospital for like a week. But I definitely feel like there was like all these little hiccups that happened to me from my first appointment, like the machine wasn't working right. There's not even, I don't even think record of my first ultrasound in the system because the doctor kept saying like, I was like, the name's not on here. Like this is, we're gonna be like, oh, don't worry, we're gonna upload it, we're gonna scan it. Come to find out it never got scanned. Like they should have just got a different machine at that point. My husband was actually able to be a part of like the main big appointments.
Mhm.
So like he went to like that first ultrasound. He was able to go to like the anatomy scan.
Mhm.
And then anytime there was like something big and major, he could go to those, but everything else he couldn't go to, which was a little weird to me, I guess.
Mhm.
I think because like he could be in the waiting room. So to me, it baffled my mind because I'm like, if y'all letting this man
Um,
come all the way through to the waiting room, why can't he come into the doctor's
yeah.
office when he's been in here for some of the appointments before? It didn't make sense, but I was like, it's fine. I'm gonna call him on video. I'm gonna call him on phone. You know, make sure that he makes his work schedule to where he can be there. So we were able to like make it work. And
Mhm.
then I would say like a big highlight for my pregnancy, because I do plan to have one more because I do want to have one more and I want to see some differences in like how things would go just with what you're going on with life. So we got married as well during the pandemic. So we've been married for a year and a half almost. Because we got married in January. And then so planning a wedding and having a baby, like, I thought it was a good idea. And looking back, I'm like,
Girl, I'll
it was
never plan a
necessary,
wedding
but
ever
was it?
again.
Literally, like, was it a good idea? Because I'm like, that was like two major things happening, and it made me more prone to like, emotionally like experiencing some things that had caused depression. Because planning a wedding is its own beast, as you just said. I ain't never trying to plan a wedding again. It's its own beast, and then being pregnant is its own beast. And then so you have these two high things where everybody's opinions and emotions, which we'll get into a little later, is too much. So I
Mhm.
definitely had some experiences with depression and anxiety pre-pregnancy because I was just completely overloaded. And then with COVID on the rise and how that impacted like my wedding, all these different things, I definitely found myself having some moments like crying and apologizing to my son because I thought that every single thing that I felt, I was so like paranoid in a sense, especially with being a
Mhm.
therapist, about like he's gonna come out like depressed or he's gonna come out anxious or he's
Mhm.
gonna come out this. So I would like apologize to him because I'm like, but I literally can't control everyone around me and I can't control how it's impacting me. I'm doing
Mhm.
the best I can. So the whole time like being pregnant, there was some highs that I loved the joy of like watching my belly grow, watching him move. Like, you have those little mother fears to where I remember when he got his first hiccups, I was like, is something wrong, my baby? He trying to communicate to me. And I was like crying and so scared. And then I found out he had the hiccups. Like he trying to kick me and say, Mommy, something wrong. Like knowing he's probably floating somewhere in there. But I was like, he's trying to kick me. But like, those moments were really special. I definitely felt like there were moments where like I felt him kick pretty early, but people's opinions, which is something people have to realize, like not to really let people's opinions shape your pregnancy. People like, you didn't feel him kick, it's too early, it's too this. I'm like, no, he is
Mhm.
kicking. I
Yeah.
don't care if I'm not far along and my belly isn't big. He's kicking and I feel it and I know it.
Mhm.
So those were like some interesting moments. And I also can just remember, I really, honestly, I really like the love and care that people like give to you during
Mhm.
like your pregnancy. That's probably one of my favorite points because I feel like people are intentionally just like more caring and they want you to be okay. And every strangers are like, let me help you with this. I remember I got my nails done before I ended up having to be induced. And the lady was like, go ahead. It was a black lady in there. And she was like, go ahead and get this white woman treatment. Like, and I fell out laughing because I was like, wow, like that's so interesting. And then for her to say that and the weight that that holds, I'm like, wow, this may be one of the main moments in your life where you get treatment like you're white, to where everyone waits
Mhm.
on you hand and foot. Nobody's like, everybody's giving you special treatment. And I was like, ooh, this is profound. But she was serious, like, get it, sis. Go ahead and do it. So all those things were very interesting to me. And then there were the lows, like I have fibromyalgia.
Mhm.
So my son nestled in a certain area of my body during my last trimester and I couldn't walk. So I had to work from home
Mhm.
because it caused so much pain. And the doctors were just kind of like, well, we can't cure pregnancy and we can't cure fibromyalgia. So
Mhm.
you just gonna have to ride this one out. So it made it really hard to where I would be like in tears. Like I would have to like try to like inch my way or crawl my way up. My husband always had to help me. We had like a walker at a point in time in here
Mhm.
because the only way that it was probably going to stop is when he came out. and he wasn't about to come out anytime soon, or so I thought. But but having that pain was probably the one pain where I'm like, I don't want to feel that pain again, because that was too much. And he was just comfortable. There was nothing really that I could do. That's just where he wanted to be. But I was blessed to have like no complications or no issues with him outside of that. In my pregnancy, he was very
Mhm.
healthy. My pregnancy was very healthy, other than the fibromyalgia. So I know that when I actually got preeclampsia, just like you, I was blown, because in my mind, I'm like, well, I took the little aspirin pill that I didn't ask y'all
Mhm.
why I gotta take this because I'm black. Like, they're like, well, yeah, essentially. But I'm like, I didn't took the things I thought, like, I would have done all the tests. I thought everything was fine. How the heck did I end up with preeclampsia? I've never even had issues with high blood pressure. And then so for me, it was more so like, I start to feel really sick. And mind you, this is a month before. So I had my plans to take my maternity shoot like the next week. Like, I'm still trying to get the nursery ready. And I kept overlooking that I didn't feel well. And then it got to a day where I was sitting before I started work and like putting some of his clothes and different things away. And then I was like, I really don't feel well. Like, I start seeing like little black dots like in my vision. Like, I was like, I
Mm.
just feel really sick. And then I called my doula and I was like, I don't know, I feel really sick. I just wanted to let you know, do you got some advice? And I was at home by myself. And when she was like, I'm not trying to scare you, but I think you might have preeclampsia. Don't, get worked up yet, but I need you to call the OB. I need you to do this. And then I'm like, okay. And I get off the phone and I burst out in tears, because I'm like, I didn't understand what that was. And I would like to know what, if you understood what that was before. Like, I knew I had had conversations with people, but honestly, I had one friend from like middle school. This is the only person I ever knew that had it. She had
Mhm.
preeclampsia. Her baby died. So my
Mhm.
mind associated preeclampsia with my baby's gonna die. Like, and I
Mm.
thought we did everything to prevent this. So I didn't
Mhm.
have like no type of anything to stand on but fear, because I
Mm.
hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it work out before, because I only had one reference. So it was a very, very scary time of like, okay, call the OB. And they're like, yeah, I think you need to get here. And I call my husband and I'm like, so I'm gonna go to the doctor, but don't get off work. I ain't having this baby. You ain't got to worry. So I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna tell you. And he's like, no, I'm coming home, because in case you do, I need to be there, and we're
Mhm.
gonna do this together. And we were able to go together, and then that just opened a whole nother dome of things. But I definitely would love to hear, what did you even think preeclampsia was, or did you have any reference that was like positive of things working out?
I did. So my mom passed when I was I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had kidney disease, and like also I found out she had congestive heart failure, but that like runs in our family. So once I shared that at my initial appointment, my doctor was like on it. The whole team was on it. And they like pulled up all our records. My mom like, and they saw, and they had read her record and my record before my first
Mm-hmm.
appointment. And they were like, so based on your record, this is what we suggest. Are you on board? And basically what their suggestion was like, we're going to clear the table with every single test we have.
Love that for you.
Whether your insurance is going to cover it or not, it's up to you. You can check with your insurance, but we will give it to you. Um, and that was also kind of weird because I have PPO insurance, and my husband was like, it's probably because you have PPO. And I was like, I don't know, but we knew we were going to deliver at Stanford from
Mm-hmm.
the get-go, so it was fine. My doctor explained it to me because she believed my mom. So when my mom was in labor with me, both her kidneys failed, and she believes
Mm-hmm.
like back then doctors weren't really that aware of like preeclampsia and like what it looks like, and she felt like my mom probably had it and they weren't checking for it, like, and that ultimately what happened like in labor and what caused her to have kidney disease, blah 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 down the line. And so my mom passed really young, and then just the history of my family, my uncle passed of heart failure, my grandma, and I'm an only child. And like, so they were just kind of like on top of it. And so she kind of told me what to look for, but like, I never had any symptoms the whole pregnancy because they were testing, and I did the stress test early kind of thing just to make sure my
Mm-hmm.
baby was okay. And I was like, fine. Like it was a textbook pregnancy. But because that last week it started to like creep up and I felt fine. That's the scary part about preeclampsia. I had none of those symptoms that I never
Mm-hmm.
felt like I felt nauseous in the beginning, like morning sickness, but I never like threw up. It was just nausea the whole like 4 or 5 months. And I worked out my whole pregnancy. I did all my normal things. So for me, I was like, I don't know what this feels like, because even when I got to the hospital, my blood pressure was like 156 over whatever. And they were like, "Are you sure you feel fine?" And I was like, "I feel fine." Like I literally felt
Mm-hmm.
fine. Um, Even like after my water broke, I called and they were like, "Oh, like I don't remember if they said like, wait a second," but my husband was like, "We gotta go." And I was like, "I'm about to take a shower because
I got
this
other this gonna have to
is
wait for a second.
disgusting. Like, I need to wash my body. There's stuff all over me." I got in that shower. It was the best shower I ever had in my life. Um, so we waited like an hour, and then eventually I was like, we should probably go, because we lived in Milpitas at the time and we had to drive
Okay.
Palo Alto. So we get there, and it was like a black nurse, and she was like, "Girl, why did you wait an hour?"
Because you said, baby, I had to take a shower, okay?
It's like, "We needed to know how much fluid is in you." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And so like she's like, "We already called your doctor." Everybody's like, "What are you doing?" And
Mm-hmm.
so they talked to my doctor, and I was at first nervous because I had the same. My doctor never missed an appointment. So I had
Good.
my
Okay.
OBG like every time. Oh no, one appointment, but she told me she was gonna be out of town. But I had already met the other OBGYNs on the team. And so I already knew who I was going to meet the one time she was out. And then when I met that one, I was like, dang, like I should have picked you, because I like my OBG, and none of them were black. I didn't have no black people on my team.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the white lady, her name is Dr. Coleman. And if y'all want a good OBG, Dr. Parman or Dr. Coleman at Pampton, Palo Alto,
Mm-hmm.
chef's kiss. But like, so Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
like my appointment with her, I remember it was so personable. She's from like Georgia. It was like a 45-minute, it was supposed to be a 15-minute appointment, just to like, it was a check-in. She met me for 45 minutes, like talking about my family, her family. Like it
Right.
felt so good.
Which is important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I first got to the hospital, and I could see on the board who the doctors were, I was like, dang, Dr. Coleman's here. And then there was another like Dr. I don't know, it was an Asian doctor that I hadn't met. And I was like, I don't know how she is. So I was like, I hope I don't end up with her. And so I was like, oh, Dr. Coleman. So I might get her. But the time was going by and Dr. Coleman's shift ended or whatever. So I ended up getting delivered by this Indian guy, like this Indian dude I never met, but he had read
Mm-hmm.
on my chart or whatever. And I remember they weren't, they actually didn't even tell me I had preeclampsia until the day after I delivered, like when I was already admitted. So I kind of appreciate that. Like Sanford was really good with like not scaring me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were telling my husband some things like, and he could see the machines and stuff because they were behind me. So he could see like the numbers and stuff. And like they were talking to him more so, but they didn't really tell me, because me and my doctor knew I wanted to have a vaginal birth. And we had already said like they don't use forceps, they use a vacuum. They ended up having to use a vacuum to get my son out because he kept like going up. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that peanut pillow thing
Yeah.
that they use that to help your cervix or something. Like it's a reason why they give it to you. But they was telling me, we just want you to feel more comfortable, like, and it did feel more comfortable. But the
Mm-hmm.
whole time they were using like all their methods to make sure I could have a vaginal birth. And like the
Mm-hmm.
doctor, he was like, okay, your blood pressure is like stabilizing a little bit, but like Kai's heart rate was like dropping or something. He
Yeah.
was like, look, you got to get him down or you're gonna have to have a C-section. And he came in like 2 times. And then like the second time he was like, all right, look, he was like, I'm gonna give you like 5 10 more minutes. He was like, if you can't get him down to the point where I can get him out of vacuum, like I'm sorry, but I have to do a C-section. So I appreciated that they didn't make me have a C-section. And like
Mm-hmm.
I remember my husband was like, he was like, all right, like he was really good in this the whole time. The nurses
Yeah.
was like, they was like, can we hire you? Because a lot
Listen.
of these men ain't nothing.
Listen.
And I felt like too, like God, like my whole pregnancy, I was like on and off kind of emotional because my uncle had passed while I was pregnant, which was the person who raised me, my
Mm-hmm.
mom's brother. I also don't have a mom. So it was like, dang, I don't have like, I'm a mom and I don't have my mom. So it was like emotions up and down. So when you said like feeling depressed or whatever, I don't feel like I felt depressed, but I did feel like, dang, I hope I'm gonna do this right, because I don't really have that much of an example and I'm an only child.
Mm-hmm.
So like my first nurses when I was in L&D, like the first two, they were sweet, but they was just like, they just doing their job. Like they weren't as personable. They were younger too. So it was just kind of like, they was just here doing their job for their shift. And my nurse who stayed with me through the whole thing, it was so funny. And she came in and she was like, look, you're not about to celebrate a birthday without me. And she
She
was
said
like,
on period.
yeah. And then again, nobody was Black. It was like this cute little white girl, and she was like super sweet. It was like we was best friends. Like
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I knew her my whole life. We were showing each other our dogs. She came and checked. It was just like a connection, and she made it a point to make sure
Yeah.
me and my husband was like good. Like,
Good.
and so when I went in there, like when we first get there, they asked like, do you want um epidural now because it's in your like plan and you want one? And I was like, no, I'm gonna hold it off because I'm like, I don't want it to like run out or whatever. And they were like, it's
It
not
don't run
like
out.
it's not gonna run out. And so I was like, it's fine. I felt because I felt fine. Like I didn't have any contractions really anymore for a while. And they like induced me. They put the two little strips up or whatever, and they were like, oh, this should take like 12 hours or something, and then we'll do the Pitocin. I was like, all right. That little thing kicked in 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 6 hours of no medication, and I was sitting there and I was like
Mm-hmm.
basically about to start speaking in tongues. And the doctor and the nurses was looking at me. They was like, why don't you want the epidural? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to wait. And they're like, okay, do you want the medication that's like 30 minutes at a time to take off the
Mm-hmm.
edge? And I was like, all right, just give
Mm-hmm.
me that and like order me some food. And so when I
Give me that
called
and run my food.
when I ordered the food, the kitchen was like, oh, 45 minutes. I looked at my husband, I was like, I ain't gonna make it. I was like, I'm not gonna make it 45 minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was like 15 minutes into that medication. And my husband was like looking, he was like, all right, everyone was like, my heart rate and everything was still okay. Like I was okay. Like it was just Kai's heart stuff or whatever. And it was like 15 minutes when I looked at the nurse, I said, when is it supposed to kick in? Like, and
Right.
she was like, oh, it's just supposed to take the edge off. I was like, what is the edge? Because
Right. Because
nothing has
listen, baby,
changed.
I'm peeking over.
Nothing has changed. And so I was like, all right, well, it was like 6 hours into labor. I was like, well, what's my centimeters at? And she was like, oh, yeah, let me check. And she was like, oh, you're at 1 centimeter. I was, oh, nah. I was like, no. Yeah. I was
Is
like,
this what I signed up
yeah.
for?
I was like, I need the epidural now. And like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think anyone else was even in labor that night. Like, it was pretty quiet in the like unit or whatever. So the anesthesiologist people were like, they came back fast. So I'm thinking that it was gonna hurt, like them putting the needle in. It did not hurt. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the test ran, it'll feel like a bee sting or something. And I'm thinking, because I've been stung by the bee, I was like, oh no, like what? Like
I ain't trying to, again, is this what I signed up for?
it felt like somebody popped you with a rubber band. It was like nothing. So I was like, all right, I'm sitting there still. And Stanford is a research hospital. So I didn't know the person putting it in
Mm-hmm.
was actually a student, and the guy standing next to him was the actual doctor.
Oh.
So it took her like 2 times to get it right, like get it in. And it didn't hurt. It just felt like, that feeling when you get in a pap smear and they put the little Q-tip in
Yeah.
that empty
Mm-hmm.
space feeling? That's what it felt like to
Mm-hmm.
me. So I'm sitting there, the nurse, saying, talking to me, fine, they get it through. That epidural kicked in. It was like, cool. I went to sleep. They were like, oh, you should be fine for like 10 more hours. Like, you should be fine. Like, we'll give you a Pitocin. We didn't even get to the Pitocin because
Mm-hmm.
it was like a couple hours later. And I'm sitting there, I woke up out of my sleep and I'm like moving. And I'm like, I feel like something's about to come out my butt. Like, I'm about to poop on myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so the nurse comes in and she's like kind of laughing. And she was like, I think you're about to have a baby. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, and she's like, yeah, I think so. She's like, let me check. And she's like dying. Like, she's like, girl, you're 10 centimeters. I was like, oh, okay, wait.
Right.
Wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
My husband starts crying because he's getting emotional, like it was really about to
Yeah.
happen. Never again. I looked at him
Oh,
during looked at him pushing.
you're like, and this is the moment it got even
I don't
more
know if it
real.
was like for you when you like if you had a vaginal birth, did you have vaginal or C-section?
I had a vaginal
So
birth.
no one told me about the ring of fire. They
See,
could
but
have
did you have an epidural?
yes, I did. And
Okay,
I
so
think
that's
because
interesting.
Stanford is like they don't like to drug people that's my
Maybe
theory
they didn't give
because
so.
they
I
didn't
was
give
I
me
was
so
doped up a
much.
lot.
No, see, I wasn't. So
So,
like I was able to walk fine after like I was cool. The only thing I had like the fluid still left in my legs a little for a couple of days, but like nah, I felt all that. So
mm-hmm.
when it was time to like push, the pushing part wasn't hard, But when they
The
had,
coming out. Yeah.
I like that had an air of mask on for breathing, and like my husband was like, my mask was up here.
It's in your brain need oxygen right now because that's what's important. Screw it all.
The level of pain,
Hmm.
I do remember looking at him and I was like, I'm
This is
not
it.
having any more kids. I
This is
said,
the
this
one and
is
done.
it. I cannot do
Sorry,
this.
bub.
And he was like, okay,
He said
okay. He was
anything
like,
you
just
want.
get it through. And then I reflected back to my godmom telling me what my mom told her in labor with me. And she said, Kim, don't ever let me fucking do this shit again. And she didn't have no more
Hmm.
kids. And like the doctor, after I delivered, he was like, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be back here in a couple years. My wife
You
has
like,
three.
sir,
He
what?
was like, yeah. He was like, women always forget to have amnesia. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna forget. And to this day, I
Yeah.
did not forget. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see it happening
Yeah.
anytime soon.
I heard somebody say it might it somebody told me that like there's a chemical or something that releases that makes you like forget. I don't know if I've forgotten it. It's so interesting because it's different experiences on different ends for both of us. Because because I was pre-eclamptic, I had different procedures. I don't know if you had this procedure in yours, but I know when they told us that okay, we're gonna have to get you induced to deliver the baby. Like I was full of fear. Again, I was crying because I was like, is my baby even fully developed? Like, how are you just gonna take him out of me and he ain't fully developed? That's not what we're here to do. I'm sorry, I'm going home because I planned on getting food. I was gonna go to the doctor, go to the doctor appointment and get some food. And then so I'm like, now you gotta mess with my food. And now you're telling me we're about to have to take out my undeveloped baby. Like, it's not what we're doing today. It's just
How
not.
many weeks was he?
He I can't even like how like you go through so much and you forget the little details, but he was born basically almost exactly a month early. So he was late
Oh, okay.
preemie when he was born, but his lungs still needed development. Um
Oh,
so they had watched me through a lot of things. And of course, when you're in like a whirlwind of things, all you're hearing is wah, 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 wah. So I'm like listening, but I told her, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to you because I'm just like, I'm overloaded and I don't know what's gonna happen. So can you give us a minute? And we like called the doula, we called my sister, like me and my husband sat there and we decided, okay, we need to do it. And I had them walk me through the steps. And of course they told me like the baby should be completely fine, which is what I needed to hear. But they were like, but the lungs, you will have to get 2 steroid shots during this process in your butt cheeks in order to be able to make sure that his lungs get fully developed. I'm not a
mhm.
big person that's but shots ain't fun to me. They just not. But I knew I had to get these things done. So then they were like, okay, because we were in triage. So our hospital was full. And that was always a fear of mine that I had like this
Mm,
plan, I had this thing, and I wasn't going to be able to birth where I wanted to birth. Because even though I was having all these ups and downs experiences, some good, some bad, like I was like, I at least still need familiarity with where I go. I don't want to go have to drive all over the place. I don't want that.
mhm,
And then so I was like one of the last few people to even make it in that night. And we were in triage for like a whole day through the night, and then maybe sometime at the next day we got to finally get a room. So like for me, because my husband and I hadn't packed our bags, my sister ended up meeting my husband at our place and like getting the bags packed and trying to go through all the motions because we didn't expect to deliver him excuse me that early. um
mhm,
but the difficult experiences started for me was one before I had even had like the baby, I finally had got my midwife because I was cleared, and that's why the preeclampsia was like a mind blow because I'm like, I finally get a midwife, which is who I always wanted. I never wanted to be delivered by OBs. I always wanted a midwife, and I got a black midwife. I got to see her like
mhm,
2 times, but because I went to preeclampsia, it made me high risk. So then, therefore, I wasn't even going to finally have the midwife that I had some
mhm.
type of. Well, I finally get to see somebody more than once. I didn't even get to have her during my during my labor and delivery. So again, I'm like, dang, I don't have no sense of familiarity with any of this because I ain't seen the same person. And then
Mm,
so they ended up having to do an intervention with me. And I don't know if this has happened, but they had to put a balloon. Did you have to have that?
mm-mm. What do you mean? A
So
balloon in
like,
you to make
yeah,
your
a
water
balloon
break?
in me to make me
No.
dilate, which
Kai was
was
they put the little strips to help me dilate a little, but Kai was 30. He had like one day up hitting 37 weeks. He was 2 weeks
okay.
early. So my doctor, when she was already planning my induction, she was like, he's full term, like because it was at 36 weeks.
Uh-huh.
She's like, I'm gonna induce him because he's fine. He'll be fine.
Okay, see, maybe because he was still a month in there, he needed to bake into his full little bun. But I had to have like this balloon, and forgive me, y'all, I can't remember any of the terms, any of the medicines, nothing. But I had to have a balloon inserted in me, and basically, it's like they put this balloon in you, and they fill it up with like this liquid to try and like get your cervix to open. And the point is that your cervix should be, you have to keep it in there like 12 hours, so the cervix should be able to open enough to where like the weight of the balloon falls out, and that's how you know you're starting to dilate. Lucky for me, a person with fibromyalgia, I didn't really dilate. So first off, when they put it in me, and TMI trigger warning for people that may have had this experience, some people find it a breeze. It wasn't fun for me, and I think it's because maybe I had fibromyalgia, but it was a hard procedure for her to get in there, and so that's where I was like, dang, I should not have did this without my husband here, because I also didn't know that by saying yes to this, more interventions, like it starts the whole train of everything. And my husband wasn't there because he was getting the bag. So I went through it myself, but I beasted it. But and even the doctors was like telling him like she did a good job. It was one of the most painful things I ever experienced, where I never want to balloon again as an intervention, never in my life. And then to where even the doctor was like, try not to run for me, because she had a hard time getting it in, and she even said she's never had this much difficulty. But the reality is, you're sticking something in me, and I'm not dilated at all. So you're trying to put something that's not supposed to go in there, and there is no space for it. So it made it 10 times worse, and experiencing that without any kind of medicine. So once they did that, that intervention, I thought in my mind, it still is beyond me to me for people to be like, you weren't in active labor. I'm like, all of it's labor. And that's my story. I'm like, all of it's labor, because it's labor for me. So I'm like, we had to do that. I didn't dilate but 2 centimeters. So the 12 hours went by. I kept having to get I can't remember what medicine it was, but because I was in so much pain, and I was a person that went into it not wanting a lot of medication. I don't like to take a lot of medication, but I was in so much pain that I was like, I don't care. Dope me up. Every single time I ran, I was like, Rod, go get the nurse. Rod, go get the nurse. Rod, go get the nurse. Because I was in so much pain from that goddamn balloon. So then to get to the next day, we finally get into a room, and they tell me like, oh, well, you dilated 2 centimeters, so we could do it again. I said, how about not? We're not doing that. We're gonna figure something else out. Like, they got me all hooked up, and then it was just some like little unfortunateness of like how they hooked me up. We couldn't find my veins. They had to get somebody to come in there and like, really like use like the little ultrasound machine to find my veins. So I ended up having to get an IV in both arms, in the most inconvenient place where you fold your arm. So we'll always make the machines go off during the whole time, because that's the only place that they could find the veins. The downside of being induced, having a labor where it's not quick or within 24 hours or whatever, and like it took me 3 days to labor, and then being there for a week, is you still, again, don't have any familiarity. You have to go through every nurse and every doctor that's on the scene. You don't get to just have one person be there the whole time. I left up and I got some really great nurses. I had some really stale nurses. I had some really great doctors that came in, and I was like, I hope it's you. And then I had some doctors that I had to tell off. Like, it really was just kind of all over the place. So it was beautiful to have a doula there and being able to help, like, them help me and my husband, because the husbands are your partners, are part of the experience as well. And there were some people that just adored him, made sure, like, try to order him some food and sneak him in, and like get him some water. And then some people really could care less, and they were like, this is about the mother. Like, I don't care about this, that, and the third. This is about her. And then and then with the doctors, some were very gentle, and then some were very just harsh. Our anesthesiology, like, because it was so like packed, she was very pushy in the very, very beginning of like, you need to hurry up and make a decision, because it'll come a point to where you might need it, and then I'm not gonna be able to help you. So it was just all these different things and approaches, and it's so hard to kind of like keep up, because you're also laboring and you're trying to figure out what's going on. For me, I didn't dilate until the third day. I was at 2 centimeters. So my difficulty was they kept putting me on all the medicine and pop and like pushing it, and it wasn't doing nothing. So then they started trying to figure out, like, they were like, have you had surgery down there before? Have you this? I'm like, no. They're like, it's literally like your son is in the right position. Everything is ready. You're not opening up. So we're trying to figure out like what to do for you. So I had them like go through it, like they kept trying to push the balloon. I didn't really like that because again, I had fibromyalgia, and I don't know if people weren't looking at my plan, but I was like, you can't, if a person with fibromyalgia is telling you no, don't keep trying to ask them, because I felt like it's convenient for y'all to hurry this up, but this is, and I had to use words of, this is traumatizing for me, to get them to stop asking me to do the balloon intervention again, because I'm like, y'all not listening. There was just little things where it was like, the downsides was like people left the door open, so that kind of messed with like my how I felt concealed, because people were walking in and out at all times. Like nobody really closed the door, and my doula had to tell them she wanted her door closed. Y'all keep keeping the door open. Anybody's just coming on in. Anybody could walk by. Like no. And then it was a point where like a doctor came in, and she was pretty desensitized because there was a million and one mamas birthing at that point, and she was just kind of like very cold and like just rude and just harsh. And like she basically told me I had a failed pregnancy. Like I was failing in my labor because I wasn't dilating, and we needed to figure out what to do. And that struck a chord with my doula. She talked to us, it struck a chord with, and luckily I had a Black nurse at that time. So like we brought the doctor back in, we prayed, because if there was another, I think she was like a Latina, there was another nurse in there. Some of those nurses were really bomb.com, and I loved them so much because they were just so caring and gentle and made sure I had what I need. And then so in the moments where I had those, I like even had her go with the doula to go get that doctor, because I was like, I need to talk to her again, because sometimes doctors forget these could be first experiences for people. But even if it's our fifth experience, this is our experience with our child for us. So you can't come in with a desensitized kind of like, well, I'm the one that got to walk around and tell people these things. And it's not, it was very me, and forgetting that I'm the one that's pushing the baby out. So why are you offended with anything I'm saying? And then so we pulled her back in, and we had to tell her, I had to tell her a couple of things, because I was just kind of like, you're forgetting I'm a human, and you're upset because I called you back in here because you said you've already come in here and talked to me. But you have to remember, I'm doped up on a lot of medication. I can't fully remember what's even going on, but I've processed now. So I need you to come back in here so I can talk to you. She wasn't trying to listen until I waved the, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And that's when she was like, oh, and it gave her a certain level of respect and to listen to me. And I'm like, that sucks, because everybody can't say that. And people shouldn't have to waive nothing for you to be able to just sit there and listen and not question everything. So she was all in her feelings. She only came back like one time. She didn't really try to come back too much, but I was like happy and proud for like speaking my piece, because the whole big thing for me was advocacy. I needed to know everything. I like to know what's going on. I like to be looped in. We need to know all the things that are all the pieces of information, so that we're very informed. And that's another reason why we have to do there. So skip forward to like trying to get the baby out. We all prayed, because it got to a point to where they thought they were going to have to do a C-section, because I just wasn't dilating, and it had been too long. My son was getting tired. They was trying to use the tickle machine. Like it just wasn't happening. And I was like, I didn't come here for a C-section. First of all, I didn't even come here to have a baby today, but I didn't come here for no C-section. It'll be 3 days in this mug. But I definitely had realized like, okay, Chetina, you got to pull this something out of you. And I didn't know what labor was necessarily going to be like. I don't like blood. I don't like needles. So I thought I was going to be buckwad up in that mud. But I pulled out the most warrior spirit that I never knew existed in me through the whole thing, through the epidural, through the IVs, through the pain, through just the duration. I didn't know I had that much strength. That's probably one moment where I realized just how strong and how much able I'm put. I didn't have no anxiety. Like I was chill because I knew a job had to be done, and me and my son's life was depending on it, and we needed to leave this hospital with my husband as a whole family. And then so I beasted through most of it, but this moment I was like, okay, this is a lot. And at this point, my husband was really sad. He was crying, because it's hard for the partners to watch. It's like I'm realizing like they're watching all of it happen to two people, whereas you're the mom experiencing it with you and one other person, but it kind of feels like one person, but they're watching it happen to two people that they love, and they don't know what's going to happen. So it got really like, just down and out on him, which I know people will hear in his story in that episode. So we got all the nurses, we got like the doula, all of us, we prayed, and listening to music was very helpful. I was able to have the playlist, which is one thing that did go great, because it gave us something to like focus on and like set the atmosphere for. The doula was able to bring the fan. Like we did have some of the things that I knew I needed to make me feel comfortable. So I really appreciate it and like that. My little body pillow, all of that. And then so after we prayed, I was like, all right, we're going to boost all this medicine. We're going to drop it to 0 and crank it up all the way again, because they had me at a 10. And I still wasn't dilating. And I was having contractions, but I still wasn't dilating. And then so we did it all the way up to a 10 again. And I said, if it doesn't happen this time, then fine, because we have to get them out. The Lord will provide. I went from 2 to 10 centimeters in about an hour and 30 minutes. And they were like, Mama, it's time to deliver. And I'm like, you lying? Like, I know that. I'm still trying to figure this out because you lying. And then so the delivery went perfectly. And it's so interesting because you're like, never again. Because I'm pretty sure if I felt the ring of fire, I might be questioning wanted another child or not. But I think I had so much medication in me that I still felt a lot of pain. But that moment of my child, like the pushing and the child coming out for me was like I went into like a euphoria. Like it was the most me and God and the baby moment I've ever experienced in my life. Like to where I would do it again to feel that euphoria of like just different heaven and earth colliding. That's how I felt. Like that's exactly how I felt. And I do have some remembrance of like telling the doctors, like the nurse laughing me up because she squirted a little bit of the stuff. And I was like, I'm not tearing today. So I literally told her, laughing me up, baby. And she was like, okay. So she was just consistently squirting. And I feel like maybe that helped. Like just make it an easy process because I was grateful that no matter what my journey was, you know, there were so many babies that were being born that the nurses weren't even able to be in there full time. So my doula didn't even get to like pay attention how I needed her to make sure everything was good and dandy. She had to kind of like count me and hold my leg and do that. And that's not what she was really there for, because it was just too much that was happening. And then so he came out, he was crying, he latched on. Like I didn't have like no complications with like hemorrhaging or tears or like anything. It was just a beautiful seamless. And I felt like I deserved that. Like I was like, out of my whole experience and all the highs and lows I went through, I deserve this moment of everything just being blissful and working out in the way that it should. And so like even like when I think back to like, would I do it again? I'm like, I would do pregnancy again and labor again because of the simple fact that there are some things I want to re-experience. There are some things I want to see if it's different. And then just that whole, it's like a life or death thing. And we knew that, but it's something I really felt like heaven met earth when my son came out. And I'm like, I want to experience that one more time. I don't know if it's going to turn out the same one, but I'm like, I want to experience it one more time because I was just in so much like, oh my gosh, having a baby was one thing I always feared, but I knew I wanted to do it. So to overcome that meant overcoming so much for me and making it through to the other side. And then so I feel like there's so much power in that. Now the days after that was chill. We were healing. There's some iffy things, and I ain't gonna try to make the hospital look bad, but there were some iffy things that still went on about like privacy, people not respecting the privacy. Nobody came to like help me be bathed. So like my sister had to come like a couple of days later, like, did you take a shower? And we're like on day 5, and I'm like, no, but nobody had helped come and like bathe me. Like it was so much that was like going on to where I'm like, it honestly inspired me to want to add some type of service to my therapy practice because of the fact that I'm like, there were some things where the ball was like really dropped here. There were some terms that people said that were not helpful, like being very culturally sensitive to if your baby drops weight just a little bit. He never had to go to the nursery. He just had to be warmed up a little bit, thank God. But like he dropped weight a little bit and they were like, we can't let you leave because we need to make sure you know how to feed your baby. You don't speak terms like that to a Black family because it's very stigmatizing. And then so there was just some things that's where I was like, this was not handled right. But at the same time, I was blessed and fortunate that he was doing well and my husband was able to like be there and we were able to be like, you know, just together. And I definitely will say that something that's not talked about is, and I don't know if you were privy to this, but like the amount of cold blues that happen when you are in labor is terrifying. We heard so many cold blues, and I feel like I don't know if hospitals are aware of like the impact that could have on the birthing mother. I don't know if there's a way to like turn down the speakers or like do something, but I'm like, it's hard to be sitting there and you're hoping you don't die and your baby don't die, and you're constantly hearing all these babies cold bluing on the same floor as you. Like,
is cold blue when the baby's not
the baby's in distress and you know they can't breathe or they're dying. Yeah, like something is going wrong.
I don't think anybody else was in labor besides me that night. Like, when I walked in,
that was the luck of the Irish.
When I walked in, I thought I was in the wrong department because the nurses and doctors was just chilling at the desk, like talking and kicking. And I walked in and I was like, did I come in the back door? Like, and they were like, oh, you're in the right place, come on in or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't think anybody was there. And then I felt like, not embarrassed, but I felt like, damn, they heard me yelling and cussing like this when I was pushing the baby. And it was like, Nobody, but I didn't hear no code blues. Like, and
which
I
is
don't know if that's just
beautiful,
how Stanford's set up where it's like a silent code just for them to hear. I have no idea because
which
I
would
didn't
be
see
perfect because that
nothing
was it's
flashing or
terrifying.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
didn't hear any of that.
terrifying because you know
Even
people
when
are having distressing moments, like and
even when
babies are
like
having distressing moments.
yeah, even when like I guess the Kai wasn't doing well, like they didn't come rushing in. Like you couldn't see their distress. Like the doctor,
Hmm.
none of the nurses seemed like, oh my God, like it was very like, all right, this is what we do. Da, da, da. It was like calm, which was helpful. But I'm like not really. I guess I'm an anxious person, but I carry it well. Like so, I wasn't my
Hmm.
whole pregnancy. I was just like people would ask me like, "Are you nervous?" Whatever, and I'd be like, I don't know what to expect, so I'll figure out
Right.
when I get there. And that's just kind of how I live life. I'm just like, I'll figure out when I get there. Like I don't know what to expect, so there's no reason for me to be like nervous. But
Hmm.
it's interesting when you brought up like sharing that you're a LMFT. They had asked me, you know, like their initial appointment, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a therapist and I'm in private practice. At the time, I hadn't started my group practice. I was with a group practice.
Hmm.
Um, and like been doing that practice. And they're like, oh wow, like so there was that conversation. So they all knew I was a therapist. So every time I had an appointment, they were like, how's it going? I know you're exhausted dealing with a pandemic and you're probably swamped. And I was like, yeah, I'm swamped. So I felt like I had a little more respect, like, because I'm in the same, like, kind of like medical field, but mental health side. So they
Hmm.
kind of knew, like, all right, I don't know. I felt like maybe they just knew I had a real job. Like, and then again, I think too, like, when they look at the way your insurance is providing, maybe because I didn't, it's scary and sad to hear like all those things you had to go through with a lot of people not listening. And then I always feel like, weird even sharing my story with some other Black women because I
Hmm.
haven't found I haven't found any Black women who's had a smooth
A very positive. I have
right
one friend,
like
and hers was seamless to where she felt
yeah
like she got robbed because she was like, I wanted to feel more pain or something. I'm like, girl, what?
I
No, you didn't.
it was like I remember having like one nurse after having Kai that was like she was just kind of like just cold, not rude, but just like I don't know, she
Hmm.
just seemed like she was having a bad day or whatever. And she was only on shift for like it felt like 2 hours. So I didn't really have to experience her that much.
Hmm.
But all of the nurses that came through, the one thing I couldn't stand was like they come in every 2 hours to be like, here's your medicine or take this. I'm like, y'all want me to sleep, but y'all keep coming in here. So like my husband had to tell them like we're good, like don't come back in here. And they didn't. And like nobody
Hmm.
was like opening the door. The door was closed. They had the lights dimmed. Like they even had
Hmm.
like this setting. They were like, it turned the lights changed, like, and they brought like a humidifier in for us. Like, so it felt like I was at the spa.
Right.
And then like the next day, the Dr. Coleman, the doctor who was another OBG on my team, she came because she was on shift or whatever. And it felt really good. Like she didn't have to come see me. Like, and she came and she was like, I saw your chart. She was like, you did so good. Da, da, da. She was like, I hope you remember me because I'd only seen her one time before in my whole
Yeah.
pregnancy. And she like was
Same.
like, I'm so proud of you. She was like, I just want you to know, like, your mom is proud of you. Everybody was rooting for you. You did so good. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And she was like, you know, I just want to let you know, like, I want to keep you here for at least 2 more days. She was like, your blood pressure has went down, but she was like, I just want to make sure it stays down. And she was like, are you okay with that? And I was like, yeah, I got nowhere to go. We in quarantine. Where am I gonna go? And she was like, all
Hmm.
right, cool. And like she told me how to order food from my husband. She was like, just order 2 meals at the same time. They're not gonna ask. And I was like, all right, cool. So I did that. So well, I just ordered like a breakfast and a lunch, and I just made it seem like I wanted them to come at the same time. So I would order him a lunch because he doesn't like breakfast, and so he was taken care of because he couldn't leave. Like they weren't letting people leave the hospital and come back because it was quarantine.
Uh-huh.
And we had like that driving curfew time. So like
Yeah.
we had to stay. Um, and it was a good experience. Like, and I tried to tell, like, you know, my cousin, I told my cousin after her story, I was like, please get better insurance so you can deliver at Stanford. Like, I tell anybody,
Hmm.
especially Black, I'm like, please get better insurance so you can go to Stanford and PAMP. Like, because even my son's pediatrician is through Stanford Pediatrics. And when we've picked, again, his pediatrician is, I think she's Japanese. I don't know. She's Asian.
Hmm.
She's like young. From the moment we met her, we had our first Zoom session before when I was still pregnant, it just felt like, yep, this is who I wanted to pick. And I didn't know what I was looking for with a pediatrician. And even on the phone, they asked, and I'm like, I literally said, I was like, somebody who's culturally inclusive and knows how to treat Black people and is nice to kids. And that's all I said.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Dr. Hayashi. I was like, all right, cool. And then we met her, and I had my appointment the day after I got out of the hospital or whatever. And she is the whole staff. Like, I never had a problem getting an appointment. Um, it's just, I have nothing negative to say about
Yeah,
Stanford's
which
team.
is
So
beautiful.
I appreciate it. And then like even with my son, we got him circumcised at the hospital, and my husband thought he was gonna be able to go like watch, but they're like, no, we don't let people come
Oh,
watch the
really?
circuses. And they don't let people.
Oh,
At Stanford, they
interesting.
don't, because they were like, they just don't, like, it's too much of a liability. Which I was like, yeah, because you're gonna be trying to tell them what to do. And they use a little robot thing. I think it's like somebody behind the robot that does it. And they were
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, we just give him. And I was nervous. I was like, I don't want my baby to cry. And they was like, that's why we don't let people come.
Mm-hmm.
But they came back, and they told us how it would be, and they explained, like, so they explained the differences. If you could get him circumcised, these are the things to look at, pros and cons versus
Right.
not, pros and cons. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, circumcise him, like, it's whatever. It was real quick. They were like, he didn't even really cry. And
Yeah.
um the lactation specialist came every single day to visit, to make sure I was like producing enough of the little thing. But like, they did everything. Like, the lactation specialist was like hands-on. She was like, you want to have it here and here and do this. She gave me a
Yeah.
list of all these brands to buy and all the stuff. She'd sent me home with all types of tricks and stuff, because one of my nipples is like it turns in, so it
Inverted,
doesn't
I think.
inverted. Yeah, so I only had like one good poop, and so she
Mm-hmm.
taught me how to like make the other one do a good job too. So I felt kind of prepared leaving the
Cared
hospital.
for and
But it
and
was
and
also,
mm-hmm.
yeah, but it was also weird when you leave. We got in the car, we were like, we gotta keep this person alive. And it was
Listen,
like, when they say that baby gonna wake up every 2 hours, he wakes up every 2 hours. Like, I don't miss that. And my entire pregnancy too, I was like reflecting. I was like, some women are like, I love being pregnant, or I miss being pregnant and stuff. And I was like, the whole time I was like, I'm not seeing it. I don't know what there is to
I'm
miss.
not understanding the vision,
I
and
I don't like it. Um, I'm missing out on a lot of things.
mm-hmm.
There's nothing fun about this. Like, I don't see myself wanting to go back through this. And then again, like pushing out the baby, I was like, again, I did not get that coming to God glory moment. Like, I almost dropped him. Like, they handed him to me, and I was like distraught. I was like laying there like, and he was like sliding off. The nurse like
Right.
caught him and like put him, like clean him and whatever. And the doctor was like, "Are you okay?" And I didn't tear or anything. I would have thought I split from the front to the back, and
Listen, from the rooter to the tooth.
they were like, there's no tears, you did good. And like, my entire, from me getting to the hospital and like labor, it was 12 hours. And they were like, this was so good, it's such a short labor. I was like, short? They're like,
Right. It can
oh
feel
yeah,
like
your first
forever.
one. Yeah, they're like, your first one normally can be like 24 to 30. So I was like, oh no, 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 we wasn't doing that. And then they were like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they were like, they think maybe because I worked out and I'm like an athlete, like it helped,
Mm-hmm.
which maybe it did, because
Probably
when it
so.
got time to pushing, I didn't feel like exhausted. Like, I felt like I had like a lot of energy to get through labor. It was just that ring of fire. Whew,
You said
I would
that's the
not,
see.
I
And
can't
see,
even
even with the
put,
pushing, like nobody ever tells you the pushing, because I just remember they kept trying to tell me, you need to breathe this way. I'm like, first of all, I have asthma. I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out how to breathe, but I kept saying I don't know how to do this
yeah, I didn't know how to do
because
it
I
either.
didn't know how to do this. So I'm like,
It,
I'm doing the best I can.
yeah, they were like, the nurse finally, she was like, just like act like you trying to use the bathroom. I was like, I feel like I'm doing that, but like, it's nothing. I don't feel like anything's happening. And I think that was that epidural, but I think they just didn't put enough for the ring of fire. I don't know, because the ring of fire didn't connect with the epidural. So I felt all of that. So I'm like, people like,
Mm-hmm.
you could go ahead and have another one. No, I cannot, because I'm gonna pay for a surrogate. Like, that's where I'm at. I'm gonna save. and pay for a
Listen,
certificate. Like,
Listen, I think it's beautiful to own your story in regards to just like if you're like, hey, I don't want to have no more kids, don't have no more kids. Because a lot of times people are going to hit you with the when are you going to have more? And I don't really know where that came from. Maybe it came from society and women just being people that's supposed to have a bunch of kids, because that's what the family's supposed to look like. But the reality is, I'm noticing a lot of people are like, actually, I'm a one and done, which I actually feel like is much more of an informed way of thinking about it and being very intentional about what it is that you want and what would be great for your family. So I think that is beautiful that you've gotten to that point, because I know, like for me, I said I do want to have just one more because I know we have the capacity for just one more. And it's so important, like how we've talked about this. I feel like Black women don't get the space to always share all the details of what's actually going on or come together and share all the details. And I find that to be healing, because I know for me, I've had to flip my story around a bunch of times because I felt all the cycle of emotions in regards to it, where I felt really grateful. Then I was really upset. And then I like might have heard something else. And then it made me upset even more. And then it's like, I experienced some type of like, um, irritation with wishing that I would have like advocated for myself more, or just been very like in a grateful like thank you so much God that this happened. I've been all over the place with it, but I think that's healthy because it comes from owning your narrative and being able to really sit and being okay with whatever emotion comes up when you're talking about your story and whatever space you're in. It's like important to just let that be what it is, because it is like your story, your family story, you and your partner's story, and the story of the birth of your child coming into this world. So I definitely am curious just about when you think of the whole thing, and it's kind of like that whole was it how you thought it would be, and like what is some things that could be helpful for people that, especially in your situation, you were saying like not having your mom and not necessarily, I know that is a lot of people's story as well, and not being able to have her to lean onto for guidance. For me, my mom is alive and I have two sisters. I intentionally didn't have them in the room because I know when you're in there with your loved one and things are happening, especially like when my mom came to the hospital and she saw like fall risk and risk of seizure, because risk of seizures was a thing because of all the medication that they had me on. When she saw it on the wall, it was jarring. So I could only imagine if she was there in the middle of everything, like what that would have felt like for her, knowing that I was prone to possibly having a seizure because of the medication and being induced. So we intentionally wanted a doula because we knew the doula could handle variations of it and then be that middle person for us to talk to our family to keep them kind of calm because of so much that was going on. So even to the day, if my family members listen to this, there may still be some details that they didn't know that they're going to learn about, because I didn't really want my husband and I to be stressed. We really needed to focus on the task at hand and make sure that we were both well and caring for each other and honoring our moment together and not having to worry about just everyone and everything. But I'm curious just about like advice that you would have or guidance that you would have for people that may have had similar background stories to you, and being able to highlight y'all. Yes, it is very real. Maternal Black mental health rate is like dying is a real thing. It's a real fear. It's a fear that I had all the way to where I got home. It took me a while to get out the car because I was in tears. I was so grateful that me, my son, and my husband made it home together. Everybody doesn't make it home with their baby. Everybody doesn't make it home with the person that birthed the baby. So to be there, I boohoo cried my eyes out because I was just so eternally grateful for all of that. But in just like preparing people, because I just feel like we don't really know what it's like until we know what it's like. So if you had something that you can like say to give some people some guidance, like what would that even be?
To be honest, I don't really know. But I would say the only way I say I don't have like a exact thing, I would say more be true to yourself and really find who you are as a person, like, and maybe find that before you choose to get pregnant. Because for me, like I said, my view of death is very different than most people. Like, it does not really like phase me, and that's just my childhood trauma. Like, I was the person who found my mom deceased, so that shifted everything. And also just witnessing my mom being sick my entire childhood, I don't think there was a time where she ever was not sick. So the thought of like passing during labor never really came to mind. It was more so like the pain level, because I'm more of somebody that's like a logical thinker. Like, I have to know, all right, what's give on a scale of 1 to 10, what am I looking for? And I couldn't really put it on a scale, so I was more like winging it my whole pregnancy, just like, all right. And then when I had practice in Hicks, it kind of gave me a feeling, and I was like, y'all got me messed up if this is what
This is what it is.
because
Why
no
y'all
one
didn't tell
talks
me?
about that. Yeah.
Where was the group for this?
Yeah. So I would say like really just be true with yourself. Don't live in fear. Like for me, I
Mm-hmm.
felt like not coming home was not a thought. What does come up for me is um living past my mother's death age. That often plays in my mind of
Mm-hmm.
like, am I gonna make it past 43? That is my mind. I'm 35, so now I'm like, okay, I'm getting close to 43. And I have to always counter that and say, like, that was my mom's story. This is my
Mm-hmm.
story. And it's more so the fear of like leaving my son behind. I don't want to do that. I think that's for most moms. And like also leaving my husband behind. Like, I don't ever want anyone to feel the feeling of losing a parent, even though I know that's a part of life. But it is a
Mm-hmm.
feeling that like you can't really put in words and it never goes away.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like I would want someone to not feel that, even though I can't control how someone's gonna feel. But it's also like journaling helps. Psyching myself out in a sense of just being like, we're not gonna know till we get here. We can't really
Mm-hmm.
I can't read the future. I do a lot of reality testing with myself. I'm a very like logical person. Like I'm a very like realist. So if something makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not gonna waste my time on it. Um, so it was also I think it was just a surreal blur, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
coming home. It just was like he was so small. I didn't even realize babies were that small. Like,
Right. They're
'cause
so small.
I was never around like babies like that. I'm an only child. My husband's only child. Before having him,
Mm-hmm.
we always said we wanted 3 kids. I don't think that's gonna
You like
happen.
absolutely not. Like
No, because we were always like, we can't be the family of only children. And now I'm like,
mm-hmm.
hold my beer, we about to be in Guinness Book of World Records because baby, we this is not happening. Even my husband is not on board with having another kid. Like, and my mother-in-law to stop bringing up having another kid. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was home 4 days after having a baby, and she was like, "Well, now it's time to go have another one." And I wanted to like literally cuss her out, like.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the family were saying that, and I wanted to be. I like was like wanted to throw hands, like, shut up, like I
Yeah.
my vagina's not even healed yet.
It's
Like, be
still
quiet.
open to
Yeah.
God.
So my husband had to step in and let her know, like, she doesn't like when you say that, and she doesn't like when people say that. Like, we're not thinking about having a kid. That's not even something
Mm-hmm.
on board. Like, we're trying to figure out this. We don't have a lot of help because we're only children. So, and my
Mm-hmm.
mother-in-law is older, like she's in her 70s. So it's only so much she could do. And finally, people kind of stopped. I think they also stopped because I kind of low key started to be like, when are you planning your funeral? Like when old people would ask me, I'd be like, oh, did you plan your funeral? No, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't ask me about planning a baby. Like,
And
no.
that'll be even because I know, because y'all don't know this, but we're gonna do a part two of this, and we're definitely gonna be able to have some space to talk about like unsolicited advice or unsolicited comments because that's a big thing, and people being able to know how to navigate and handle that as well. So I want you to save some of that goodness because I want to be able to have the space to like talk even more about that because the when are you having babies, the just everything comes like the comments don't stop. I learned that from planning a wedding and having a baby. Everybody is forever going to always have an opinion. So even in just that, like remaining true to yourself, like I'm even just like adding to that and just saying like be okay with whatever your boundaries are and be okay with if you have to if there's something that people are doing whether it's before like before you had a baby, why you had the baby, after you had a baby, if there's anything people doing that's making you uncomfortable or is adding stress or you don't feel like you're being understood or you feel like you need to make things clear, one big thing I've learned is just speak up. Like people are always going to feel some type of way about whatever. So it's like you or them sometimes. So speak up and let things like, be heard, let things be known. You can be and are one of your biggest advocates. And I always tell people do it with a tremble in your voice. If it makes you anxious or nervous, do it with a tremble in your voice or write it down if you have to get the message clear and across to people because it's really important because it's such a sensitive time like for you and your family and it's also new and it's also fresh and sometimes people just don't have those things in mind and that even goes for like doctors are just everyone. We always have to be able to like recheck ourselves and realize where we're coming into when we're coming in therapists too when we're coming in talking to people that are going through these experiences and like looking through all of it with a fresh eye, because nobody's experience, as y'all seen, nobody's experience is alike. Like, we're two Black women that know like the statistics and different things of what is going on, but we haven't necessarily, we didn't even have the same exact story. We both had preeclampsia, but we didn't even have the same exact story. We both delivered at different hospitals. Everything can be different, and I really love that it wasn't like our stories are night and day, but different. It definitely showed two different perspectives, and I'm hoping that people can find peace in the middle of it, of knowing, like, if they have fears, if they have anxieties, or if they have worries and concerns, like, they are real things. Make sure you voice those and you talk about those with someone that is supportive during your journey, and also knowing that the possibilities are there. It doesn't have to be a traumatic story. It doesn't have to be a over the hill story. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just your story, and you figuring out how to be able to like hold that, and find peace with however it is that your story tends to turn out is really important. And I definitely do just want to highlight for people and what is helpful. I would say through like all of it is, honestly, for me, it was being informed. Now, being too informed, I will say, was not helpful for people as being too informed and watching too many videos. And sometimes that can have like adverse effect. Like for me, I got too informed, and then that caused more fear, and that wasn't good. So I feel like also knowing your meters of what your capacity is, but being informed just enough so that like what's going on, or even like Gabby mentioned, she didn't want to probably know all the different things was going on. So really knowing yourself is very important, and not necessarily being stuck like a plan of what it's supposed to be, because 9 out of 10, if you plan for this, it's going to turn out dramatically different than what you actually thought it might have been. And then so just having options, knowing what your options are is the most important, and being able to just make sure that you do have a voice and that you do have some understanding of what's going on, and that you are able to express to the people that are going to be there and going to be supporting you what it is that you need. Those are probably some of the most important things. But like I said, we wanted to make sure we had the space to fully share the experience that we had. And honestly, the interesting thing is that probably wasn't even every intricacy of every detail of what our whole experience was like. That still was just like a slither of what it is. So surprise, surprise, I've been inspired. We're going to cut this bad boy into a part 2. So this is going to come out, and then the following week, the part 2 is going to come out, so that y'all can hear the postpartum side of things, because I do feel like it's important from when you bring that baby home all the way up to the first year of the birthday. So much more stuff happens that I really want voice to, and I really want people to be able to feel like, okay, I can come to this podcast and get a little inspiration, get some guidance, get some how do I do this from these two women that are sharing their story. So we will be talking about like, how it impacted our marriages. We will be talking about that unsolicited advice and comments, and how to be able to handle that, or things that we feel like have been helpful and have not been helpful. What were some of like the biggest challenges, like, during that year, and how to overcome that, as well as like, maybe even like finding ourselves, because some people feel like they lose their self in motherhood. And I saw a post that was like, flamingos lose their pink in there when they're raising a baby because of the process, and then they get their pink back like over time. And I'm like, listen, baby, we getting that pink back. Like, so we are vibrant, we're fuchsia, we're gonna be fuchsia at this point. And then so I really want us to be able to have the experience to talk about that, and it not be a rush conversation, because like I said, a lot of times we don't have the platforms to truly share our stories and do it in such a healthy way like this. So I want to make sure that we take our time with it, and like boom out this whole season finale with fireworks and booms. So I don't know if you had any thoughts just to wrap up this part 1 of the episode, and even just telling people with those last thoughts that you have, also how they can contact you in the mean and in between time.
Yes, this was really good. I enjoyed myself for my first one. I did
Hey,
it. Yeah, honestly, be true to yourself and listen to your emotions and thoughts, and be okay with sitting with them. Journaling is helpful. Music, I'm a music person, but some people think journaling has to be a whole paragraph. There's going to be days where your journal is going to be like, F this.
Period, point blank. Close it.
And that is the point, because that's what you had to get off your chest and put it on paper, and that's fine. And there's gonna be days where you say that and you're gonna rip it out and tear it up and burn it responsibly, or, flush it down
Right.
the toilet. But, that is the point. It's a symbolic thing to release. So I liked journaling through my pregnancy. I kept a
Mhm.
lot of them, and you reflect back, and some of the things you read, you're like, I was losing my mind.
Right. I
I
love
was
that you did
like,
journaling. I wish I had the capacity to do that, child. I took a bunch of pictures though.
yeah. See, and I didn't take that many pictures while
Oh,
I
and
was
I took
pregnant.
video. Actually, I did. I took video journals. So I do have those
Oh, that's
excerpts
hecka
here
cool.
and there of like, me talking or saying a message. It's like I probably got like three, but I'm happy I did it.
See, that's hecka cool. I didn't do none of that because I was just winging my whole pregnancy until someone was like, "You don't post enough pregnancy." And I mean, if you go on my social media and you scroll back, it literally, my caption says, "Somebody said I wasn't posting enough pregnancy pictures, so here, shit." Because I was like, "I'm pregnant. What's the announcement?" So just be you. It is your journey. It's your pregnancy. It's your child. Your bond. Don't worry about what people gotta say, because most of the people who have something to say, they're actually envious or wanting a piece of you, and they want to figure out how to make that a part of them. And that's just is what it is. If you are wanting to reach out and connect with me, you can find me at www.opmtherapy.com. My direct email is intake@opmtherapy. Yeah, and I am accepting new clients. I only do telehealth, but my focus is BIPOC, but I do couples, individual, and family. I don't do children under 15 just because I am telehealth.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for sharing that because little baby got a group practice. So being able to know that she has a group practice, and if y'all want to reach out to her, she is accepting clients. She has some lovely clinicians that are also working with her. It's very important. So make sure that y'all reach out for that. Also for me, also another person that's virtual therapy in the state of California. I'm also accepting new clients just so that y'all know. I work with individuals who are experiencing anxiety, stress, or depression due to life changes, such as this, um, difficult relationships, as well as childhood trauma, and then couples that are new parents, such as this, newlyweds or engaged to be married, and that really want to make sure that their relationship is staying strong, which is something we're going to be talking about the next time. So
Mhm.
reach out to me at www.alwayslivelovely.com or connect at alwayslivelovely.com if you want to send an email. I'm gonna put all this information at the bottom so that y'all know how to reach out to either of us, even if you just have questions from what you heard today. But I definitely just want to say thank you, Gabrielle, for coming on. I'm so excited for part two because we got a lot to say.
Yes.
We got a lot to say and we got a lot to give. And this is our offering to the community. We really hope that y'all get something from it. So, like I said, I hope that y'all have enjoyed it. And please tune in next week for the part two of this rounding off the season finale because it's going to be phenomenal. So, thank you.
Thank you.